The dive began on the bottom of a deep-sea coral mound located under the Gulf Stream. This area of the Blake Plateau houses many deep-sea coral mounds composed of different sediment types and biota. At the dive's start, Deep Discoverer is met with a cutthroat eel. Due to the nature of the Gulf Stream and the plenitude of deep-sea coral habitats, cutthroat eels are very abundant in this area. This colorful sea urchin sits on an entwined framework of dead coral branches. It is a relative to sea stars, brittle stars, and sea cucumbers. A soft pink octocoral is observed in an area of high biodiversity at the base of the mound. This coral has no sclerites or stony skeleton, which gives it the ability to bend with the current. Fan-shaped sponges dominated the coral rubble at the beginning of this dive. Demo sponges are the most diverse class of porifera due to their unique body shapes. A pink goniaster sea star is perched above the coral rubble on a hydrozoan coral. Sea stars do not have a brain, blood, or heart and rely on a water vascular system to pump water throughout the body. A collection of unknown glass sponges containing silica spicules are arranged on the coral rubble. Crinoids take advantage of what the sponges expel. A small shrimp is a guest within the sponge's interior. An unidentified glass sponge has a unique stalk that anchors it to the seafloor. The pedestal feature is made of siliceous spicules. Small pink brittle stars use their 5 arms to cling to the dead coral skeleton in front of this unidentified globular sponge. The sponge contains thousands of spicules composed of silica. This small pink cup coral is growing on dead coral skeleton alongside sponges and brittle stars. Among all deep-sea corals in the ocean, cup corals experience some of the highest diversity. A small rat-tail fish ventures around this unusual and unidentified glass sponge. The sponge's broad, spicule-filled base has trapped sediment and secured it to the seabed. This specimen was collected. An hour into the dive, the flat seafloor exhibits a slope of less than 5 degrees. Fine-grained sediment and pteropod shells cover dead coral skeleton rubble. Crinoids are suspension feeders, meaning they filter food, like particles or plankton, suspended in the seawater. They typically perch themselves on tall corals or sponges to get higher into the water column. Glass sponges can take on many different and often unique shapes. This spiraled tube sponge is composed of many large spicules that have been fused together to make a rigid body. A Pluto skate with unique coloration is observed on the coral rubble before quickly swimming away from Deep Discoverer. This bright yellow demo sponge lives alongside live corals on a piece of dead coral framework. A hermit crab climbs on the underside of the sponge. An Atlantic thorny head is at rest on a small patch of sandy substrate. Thorny heads are native to the western Atlantic Ocean and have evolved 16 sharp dorsal spines, which discourage predators. 2 colonies of wispy Candidella octocoral reside on a pile of dead coral framework. An anemone is wrapped around a branch with tens of polyps. A white analipsamia with living polyps is surrounded by dead skeletal material and brittle stars. This species is one of the few stony corals found in the region. A radially symmetric sea star is discovered a couple hours into the dive. Sea stars can regenerate lost limbs if they have the central disc and at least 1 arm remaining. Large piles of dead coral framework are home to a plethora of sea sponges and living corals. A bright pink hagfish is hiding within the coral framework on a flank of the mound. Hagfish are unique benthic fish due to their lack of bones and horn-like teeth enclosed by a jawless, round mouth. This unusual globular-shaped sponge was collected to verify its identity. The 15-centimeter demo sponge is surrounded by soft corals on a pile of dead coral framework. A yellow fanning Acanthogorgia octocoral with a black skeleton stands out amongst the bare unconsolidated sediment and coral rubble beneath it. Nearing the peak of the mound, the substrate steepens. An abundance of living organisms are observed, presumably due to the abundant food supply provided by an increase in nearby currents. Branches of this common orange Madrepora species grow in a zigzag fashion. A small squat lobster searches for food within this stony coral. A small red octocoral grows amongst many other types of coral, including an orange stony coral and wispy bamboo coral. A pale pink Anthothelia octocoral with large polyps is observed in an area of high coral biodiversity. The large polyps provide a greater surface area for feeding. The white stony coral Lophelia pertusa grows amongst other living corals within the dead coral framework. This coral is the most abundant species found on the Stetson Mesa and Million Mounds region. A small blue dumpling squid sits on a substrate of coral rubble and unconsolidated sediments. Dumpling squids are nocturnal feeders that prey on crabs, shrimp, or small fish. Small, ray-finned fishes like this were seen exploring the dead coral framework twice during the dive. The ROV reached the top of the mound at a depth of 709.5 meters. A coral bioherb was observed at the crest. A small sea spider hangs onto a tall hydroid. Sea spiders do not have teeth but use long tubes to suck liquid out of their prey. This lacy Chrysogorgia octocoral found on the mound flank near the dive's end is tall, with relatively short branches. Some red soft corals live amongst this field of white madrepora stony corals. Yellow cup corals and small demo sponges are also found in this diverse area. A large branching Leiopathes black coral is observed in the company of a purple and yellow stylaster coral. Black corals get their name from their dark, rigid skeletons. An 8-legged Solaster sunstar is lying on a bed of dead coral framework. These sea stars are very predatory and can be seen preying on sea cucumbers and other sea stars. This yellow stony coral has a hard skeleton made of calcium carbonate. It provides a rigid structure for brittle stars to wrap around its base and branches. Initially mistaken for a plastic bag, an unusual black sponge was observed near the mound's crest, encrusted on the coral rubble. Many organisms made a habitat out of this sponge, including several white octocorals. A portion of this specimen was collected for identification, as it had not been observed in the Northwest Atlantic Ocean. At the end of the dive, the ROV observed dead stony skeletal framework occupied by organisms and living stony corals. The dive revealed that life may thrive at shallower depths due to the proximity of the Gulf Stream's current.